Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dwayne Brown. El Cajon's mayor is apologizing tonight for his published remarks about the city's Chaldean community. Last night, we told you about comments made by Mayor Mark Lewis in the Progressive magazine, including a claim Iraqi immigrants are quick to learn, quoting here, where all the freebies are at. Today, Lewis released a statement saying the remarks were taken out of context. He says he never intended to cast aspersions on the Chaldean community. He says he was expressing his opinion that the limited social services available in El Cajon should go to those most in need, including those in the Chaldean community. El Cajon is home to thousands of Chaldean refugees from Iraq. A spokesman for the community says the mayor's apology isn't nearly enough. Two political organizations from Arizona will pay California a hefty fine for improperly reporting the source of funds they received during the fall elections last year. The California Fair Political Practices Commission ordered them to pay a total of $15 million, the largest fine in the commission's history. The board says the groups were part of the billionaire Koch brothers network, which supports conservative causes across the country. San Diego mayoral candidate Nathan Fletcher may be criticized by his rivals for changing his political stripes twice in 14 months, but his evolution is winning him points with environmentalists. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma says, however, a recent endorsement has left some questioning the process. She joins us from the news center. Amitha, didn't Fletcher unveil his environmental platform this week?
Yes, Dwayne, Fletcher rolled out an environmental plan yesterday. On the to-do list, if he's elected mayor, he says, are improving water quality, addressing climate change, and beefing up fines.
You know, a lot of times for polluters, it may be a situation where the risk of being caught and the relatively small fine doesn't offset their willingness to do it. And those are instances where we need to look to increase penalties on those that pollute.
Fletcher's public unfurling of his plan came just days after the San Diego League of Conservation voters endorsed him for mayor over fellow Democrat and City Councilman David Alvarez. They did this even though the State League gave Fletcher only a 48% lifetime score for his votes on the environment during his 4 years as a state assemblyman. Alvarez's most recent grade from the league was 88%. Livia Borak, president of the league's local office, says the scorecard is only one consideration in the endorsement process.
But our selection of Nathan was about more than his record and his plans. He's not the only candidate with a good voting history, nor was he the only candidate who takes environmental issues seriously. What put Nathan over the top for us are his proven leadership ability and our confidence that he'll successfully bring people together behind initiatives and bring them forward.
Now, Fletcher's rating improved in his final year of the assembly when he got an 86% score for voting favorably on solar energy and global warming. That 86% rating, however, was factored into the 48% lifetime rating given by the State League of Conservation voters.
But, Amitha, there's some disagreement about the endorsement process at the league for Fletcher. Tell us about that.
That's right, Dwayne. Gabriel Solmer, an aide for Alvarez, says she quit her position on the league's board over the endorsement process. She says while she recused herself from the vote because of her ties to Alvarez, other members on the board who had publicly endorsed Fletcher and worked with him were allowed to vote. Now, Borak at the league says it's improper to disclose who on the board voted for an endorsement, but she says the league's policy requires board members who have taken a position on a candidate to disclose their involvement, and if they feel they can't make an impartial endorsement, they must recuse themselves.
KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma. We've got more about the mayor's race online at kpbs.org/election. City leaders are proposing a $120 million bond for infrastructure repairs around San Diego. Interim Mayor Todd Gloria says the money would go towards street repairs, new fire stations, and new libraries. He says the city has a backlog of capital improvement projects totaling about $900 million. It's getting harder for folks earning a middle-class income to buy a home in San Diego compared to almost anywhere else in the country. Peggy Pico tells us about some of the factors keeping home prices here so high.
A new report finds San Diego near the very bottom of a list in the affordable housing in the top 25 U.S. cities. The Interest.com survey says San Francisco is the only housing market more unaffordable for median income earners. Joining me with more are Marnie Cox, chief economist with the San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG, and real estate economist Gary London. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Gary, we know housing is expensive here in relationship to wages here in San Diego, but this survey surprisingly found the affordability here beneath New York and Washington, D.C., to name a few. How surprising is that to you?
Well, these numbers always move around, and it is, in fact, a little bit surprising, but we typically are always in the top 10 in terms of unaffordability, regardless of good times or bad.
So the bottom 10, and as the case
10,
would be,
yes.
I would say. So, Marnie, how does San Diego's median income levels compare to national levels?
I would say, building off what Gary's answer was, I think it's gotten a little bit worse here, primarily because the types of jobs that we've created since the end of the recession have been relatively lower paying than the ones that were there before, and that's added to the affordability gap.
And I'm going to ask both of you this question. Interest.com quotes the median price of a home in San Diego City as $469,000, which leaves the median income here about 38% short, if I've done my math right, of being able to, if you're a median income family, to be able to afford this house. So what do you think is behind the discrepancy? We'll start with you, Marnie.
Well, I think there are two things. One, there's a shortage of supply, which is forcing the housing unit up. But in addition to that, it's simply a high cost of living area. People are having to pay more to live here, and their incomes are not keeping pace. So on the one hand, it's a unit thing, not enough supply, because you could push down prices. On the other hand, incomes here are not high enough to be able to afford. Better jobs and more supply would end this.
Do you agree with that?
Oh, I totally agree. And what makes it more exasperating is the fact that it's never going to change. This is the situation that San Diego has been in historically, and there's no expectation that that's going to change in the future, because we can't add to the supply sufficiently to really get to the heart of this problem.
So going up or east is one option. I'm wondering if this chronic shortage is because of the limitations of our boundaries of the city, or if it's because people are holding on to their homes because they want to wait for full recovery of the economy. What do you think?
Well, the latter, to some extent. People are holding on to their homes. A big chunk of the market that might prospectively sell is, because we're still in relatively early stages of the recovery. But the big problem really is lack of developable property in San Diego County. We're out of land in most places, with the possible exception of South County, to build on. So the way that developers are going to have to respond to the demand is to supply housing in the already urbanized communities of San Diego, which means they're going to have to build up more vertical, more condominiums. They're going to build more incrementally on smaller plots of property. It's going to be a lot more complicated process going forward.
And more expensive to build that kind of real estate.
Correct. And we'll probably see smaller housing units as a result.
Okay, and Marnie, how does this kind of information, like these surveys and this discrepancy, we're at the bottom of affordable housing, how does it affect San Diego's ability to attract new business, investors, and our overall economic growth?
Yeah, 2 points. One, Gary's right. We've had this problem for a long time, so being unaffordable isn't necessarily the biggest news here. The gap getting bigger is part of the news, but I think we're actually missing an opportunity. Remember, home prices fell here by over 40% during the recession, and we didn't do a good job preparing ourselves coming out of the recession to keep and retain these home prices at the relatively low rate, say something equal to the rates of inflation, right, over the year, so that your asset wouldn't lose value, but it wouldn't jump in price. And we failed. We failed to create an opportunity for seamless units to be created in order to keep that price from accelerating the 15 to 20% that it has in the past year.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think, if you could name one or two things, well, let's just say one from each of you, that could be done to improve the housing affordability here in San Diego County?
Well, let me build again. Gary mentioned that we're moving away from green acres and into sort of urban development. It's more expensive to develop down there. Government needs to shoulder part of the burden for the development community to prepare that urban acreage for development so that they take away the risk associated with perhaps neighbors being against it or all of the environmental impact statements that need to get done. the government needs to come in, step in, and assist with that.
And Gary, let's wrap on this with you. What do you think could be done, if you could name it, as far as to help with the affordable housing here?
Create certainty to builders that when they apply, they can build. Expedite the environmental and overall entitlement process, and allow density, and create opportunities for builders to be incentivized to come into these markets and build.
Okay, Gary Lennon and Marnie Cox, thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
People who suffer from severe chronic illnesses like heart disease can easily rack up enormous medical bills, and if their condition isn't controlled properly, they're forced to make frequent trips to the hospital. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says thanks to remote sensors and new devices, some people with chronic illnesses can successfully manage their diseases at home.
Like many other Americans, the first thing Steve White does after he wakes up in the morning is step on a scale.
Welcome to CardioCom.
But this is no ordinary scale.
Ready for health check? Are you feeling more short of breath? Feel more short of breath lying down?
This scale is actually a remote patient monitoring device for people with congestive heart failure. The 51-year-old White was diagnosed in early January with cardiomyopathy. That's weakening of the heart muscle.
To me, I thought it was the flu because I couldn't breathe well, especially when I was laying down. And I was coughing a lot and couldn't get a deep breath.
White now takes a variety of medications every day. He's had to stop drinking and adopt a low-sodium diet.
I had to change my life, and I've lost 50 pounds because of it.
And to make sure his weight and other risk factors stay under control, White uses this special scale called KardioCom. Because White's heart doesn't pump well, his body tries to make up for it by retaining fluid in his lungs. That can be dangerous.
Your maximum allowed weight is...
The KardioCom scale can detect as little as 1/10 of a pound of excess fluid.
0.3 pounds.
2 times in the last couple of months, I've gained and lost 5 pounds in one day. Pure fluid in my body, and that scale tells me that.
The scale also electronically transmits the information to Odette Crandall in her downtown San Diego office. She's a congestive heart failure case manager at Sharp Reese Steely Medical Centers.
I get all the transmissions from Steve every day. If Steve alert, and depending on the questions that he answers, if he's having problems, issues with the weight, breathing, or swelling, then he will show up on my acute list.
When someone shows up on her acute list, Crandall checks the patient's answers to the KardioCom questions from that morning.
The ones that you see in red, those are acute symptoms, and those are the ones that are going to bring him to the acute list if he answers positive.
Crandall can also review patient data from the last 30 days. Then she'll pick up the phone and call the patient to find out what's up.
Hi, good morning. This is Odette Crandall. I'm calling from the Sharp Reese Steely Heart Failure Program in KardioCom. Can I speak to Stephen White?
Crandall says sometimes a patient's issues on a particular day are not associated with their heart condition.
If it's related to the heart failure and there's concerns, then I communicate with the doctor and let him know what's going on.
Crandall is one of 3 case managers at Sharp Reese Steely who keep tabs on heart patients. Each manager handles about 130 patients. Sharp's population health department also tracks people with asthma. Janet Appel directs the division. She explains telemedicine devices like KardioCom enable patients with severe chronic diseases to manage their conditions at home. Case managers can use their daily health updates to make sure patients are staying on track.
And actually be able to provide some interventions via medication or instructions to keep the patient from going to the emergency room or even being admitted into the hospital.
Appel points out some patients don't feel comfortable calling their doctor about every little problem. What's more, doctors aren't that easy to reach, but her case managers are.
And this way they have someone who's here who answers the phone, who can give them advice or answer questions and be able to say whether it's appropriate to go into the office or if it's something that we can take care of at home.
A number of remote medical sensors and other telemedicine devices have emerged in recent years. Take this device developed by San Diego's Sotera Wireless, for example. The Visi mobile system is able to measure and display all major vital signs through a sensor placed around the patient's finger. It can wirelessly transmit the data to a desktop or tablet computer.
You see on the top screen, I can see the actual cardiogram. Then I want to look at the blood pressure waveform. So I have the blood pressure, and then here's the waveform beat to beat of the heart. So basically what you have here is an intensive care unit on the wrist.
Dr. Eric Topol is a cardiologist and director of the Scripps Translational Science Institute in La Jolla. It's focused on bringing the latest in wireless health technology to the patient. Dr. Topol says with devices like Visi, most patients could be monitored at home.
That's why the hospital of the future is really vulnerable, because why do you need a hospital? Except for really sick people, because most people will have their monitoring in their own home or even on the go.
But Dr. Topol is concerned that our medical system just isn't fully prepared to embrace these innovations.
These things are just now becoming available, just becoming a possibility. But typically in medicine, it takes many, many years before wide-scale adoption takes place. The average number is somewhere 15 to 17 years. We can't wait that long. We need to innovate out of the mess that we're in from a healthcare economic point of view.
For the time being, only a relatively small number of health systems like Sharp-Rees-Steely are using remote medical devices to any degree. As a result, there aren't that many patients who are benefiting from them. Steve White says he feels lucky to have his Cardiacom scale. White hopes by keeping such close track of his condition and by taking care of himself, he'll be able to beat the odds.
I've done a lot in my time, and so I feel that it's all right, that I'm going to live with it the way it is and do well and baffle the congestive heart failure.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Your data is being transmitted.
From medical devices to education, California is making a major push on a new approach called linked learning. It lets students do projects based on real-world problems and interact with professionals in careers they're learning about. The state will spend $250 million next year to expand the program.
This is a double benefit. The students are motivated. They're constructive, confident. They go forward positive in life. They're not dropping out into drugs and gangs. But the other big positive is our businesses, our economy are going to benefit by these rich internships and relationships.
Kearney Mesa High is home to the state's first linked learning certified programs in construction tech and digital media and design. Seventh graders in the Sweetwater Union High School District get an early start on college admission at San Diego State. Peggy Pico has an update on the Compact for Success program.
San Diego State University has teamed up with young students for the last 14 years to help students get a college diploma. This weekend, the Compact for Success program will bring seventh graders from the Sweetwater Union High School District to the SDSU campus as a first step on the journey to college graduation. Here with the details are Lou Murillo, Compact's program director for SDSU, and Jimmy Cabrera with the U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lou, briefly describe for us how this Compact Success program works.
Well, the Compact for Success has created benchmarks, which are the pathway to going to college. There are several components of those benchmarks. If students meet all those benchmarks, they get a guaranteed admission to San Diego State University. That's the carrot. And those benchmarks include they have to have a 3-point GPA as a senior. They have to pass all the A through G requirements, which are the college courses. They have to pass the proficiency exams in English and in math. And they have to take the SAT or ACT. And they also have to have been a student in the Sweetwater District since the 7th grade. Those are called the benchmarks. If they meet all those benchmarks, they get the guaranteed admission.
Once they get in, what happens then? Does this program continue while they're in college?
Well, another program that's under the Division of Undergraduate Studies takes over at that point. And that program is called Compact Scholars. And so it's a very large program. They have a seminar class that all students are required to take their first year on campus. They have a lot of help, tutoring, academic support.
Yes, so the support continues. So, Jimmy, you're going to be speaking to these newly enrolled 7th graders, young ones, about attending San Diego State University. What are you going to say to them?
I'm going to present a program called What's in Your Backpack. Packing for Success in Life. That's also the title of my book. I'd use as a backpack as a metaphor, and what you put in your backpack will determine your success in life. Your backpack is not the size, but what you put in there. Your education, you believe in yourself, your attitude. I have 8 points I'm going to talk about: their character, to inspire them, to never lose hope, to get engaged. And the question is not if they're going to college. The question is where they're going to go to college. They need to start planning now when they're going to graduate.
Oh, right. In this message this weekend you'll be speaking at,
Yes.
You're also going to address something to the parents. What are you going to tell them?
With the parents, I'm going to say you need to engage. It takes a partnership. They got to be, it's been proven that the parent gets more involved with the child's education, the child becomes that much more successful. And dialogue on the table, you know, I'm talking about after dinner, talking to them continuously, inspiring them, staying on top of them, making them accountable. The parent is as much accountable as the child is to graduate.
All right. Lou, many of the students in the Compact for Success program are minorities or come from low-income families. What are some of the barriers that these students face?
Well, in many cases, the students that we work with, about half of the students come from families where English is not spoken in the home. So language is a barrier. The great majority of the students are from Title I schools, and that means that they're poor. Quite a few students, there's a large amount of diversity. You have to really remember the Sweetwater Union High School District is the largest and most diverse secondary school district in the state of California. 42,000 students, 76% of the student population is Latino.
Let's talk about this, Jimmy. Do you think those things are the things that impact mostly whether a student is successful or falls through the cracks, or do you think there's something else that also adds to whether a student's going to be successful or not?
Bottom line, I think you cannot separate self-esteem from anything. First thing what I do is, I've spoken at 1,500 schools in my career, and one of the first things the principals asked me, I asked them, excuse me, what do you want me to do when I talk to all of your students? They say, Jimmy, it's make it accountable, their responsibility, and their self-esteem. If we can let them embrace who they really are and accept who they are is where they draw their strength. If we can instill that in them, they're going to pick up everything else, be successful.
Okay, and Lou, there's some who would say it's not fair to give students at Sweetwater in the district special treatment over students in other districts. Why should they get a leg up on coming to San Diego State? How would you respond to that?
Well, that question gets asked often, as you would imagine. I think historically the Sweetwater district recognized they had an issue in their district. Students were not completing high school, students were not going to college. And they took a lot of initiative from the superintendent to approach then President Weber to say, let's work together to see if we can fix this and create a college-going culture. And that's what's happened over the last 14 years. They've done a lot of work. They've invested a lot of teacher training and staff development that work with the faculty here at San Diego State, and they've created this culture. And I think that the bottom line is if other districts want to do that same heavy lifting, I think we would be open to creating other compact-like models.
All right. Lou Murillo and Jimmy Cabrera, thank you so much. There's a whole lot more on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm Hari Srinivasan. On the next news hour, the contractors behind healthcare.gov appear on Capitol Hill, plus an interview with the head of the EPA. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
A story now about discrimination in the days when San Diego was a racially segregated city. One man refused to accept the way things were. He insisted on change and in the process, as Ken Kramer tells us tonight, became a part of history about San Diego.
Here's the east side of 4th Avenue between B and C Streets, and what happened here in 1897 was really remarkable and not greatly known. So here we go back in time, and what used to be here was Fisher's Opera House, maybe the finest on the West Coast, built of 2 million bricks. All the great shows coming through town played at Fisher's Opera House. What happened was San Diego businessman Edward Anderson with his wife bought Orchestra Circle tickets to see Around the World in 80 Days at Fisher's Opera House.
They were told, no, you can't stay here in the Orchestra Circle. Colored people were not permitted in the downstairs portion of Fisher's Opera House. You'll have to go upstairs and stand in the balcony. Well, Mr. Anderson, who was a successful businessman, owned several businesses, including a mortuary, said, forget it, we're leaving, and I'm going to sue.
And he did, and he won. The newspaper account explained that there was a new state law, you see. Owners of theaters and other public places were liable for damages if they refused to grant equal rights to all comers, regardless of color or race. And even though the case was later overturned on appeal, Anderson versus Fisher and Fisher's Opera House was the first time in San Diego that anyone of color had challenged that kind of discrimination in the courts. Fisher's Opera House later became the Colonial and was itself a landmark in town for live shows and movies on into the 1920s. Eventually, it was torn down, gone. Today, there's no trace of the place that took on the Andersons in court, but remember I mentioned that he, Mr. Edward Anderson, was a mortician? His business is still going strong, thank you. Near Federal and Euclid, there's the Anderson name, forever connected to civil rights history in our county, and a story you now know about San Diego.
You can watch more of Ken's stories about San Diego. His half-hour show can be seen tonight and every Thursday night at 8 right here on KPBS. Warmer weather is on the way this weekend, mostly overcast along the coast, though. Temperatures in the mid-70s. In the inland valleys, morning clouds, then sunshine this weekend, low 80s. Mountain areas will be sunny with temperatures in the 70s, and the desert will see sunshine with temperatures mostly in the 90s. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Good night.